What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Shooting the Shit with Ray. A little bit about myself. I own an outfit in Northwest Missouri called RMA Outfitters. I've been an outfitter there for 17 years now and absolutely love it. I still hunt public land to this day, and I hunt private land, and I hunt where I can go and when I can get it. That's for sure. So, today, what we're going to be talking about is tactics. Some of the tactics are going to pertain to more a little bit of the Midwest at the moment. Eventually, we will get to the southern states like Florida, Georgia, all those other places, but every place has its own specific tactics. And some of the tactics are broad and they cover multiple states. Um, but some of these tactics will be some blanket ones and will be very targeted um, tactics. So jumping right into it is, there is a very big difference between an early season, mid season, late season. Um, and I get questioned all the time, hey, I just got this property, or, my buddy's going to let me hunt here, or public land. I'm going to go hunt at this farm, at this place. What do you think I should do? And as we all do, early season comes, and what's the first thing we want to do? We want to jump in the saddle. We want to get it. We've been chomping at the bit all season long. We've been practicing our butts off, and we just want to go and jump in the stand and hunt. Great. Also, it will kick you in the butt. And the reason I say that is because some places, number one, if it's a brand new spot, brand new place, I technically want to refrain from jumping in that first morning just because I kind of don't know what's happening. And I feel like if I can go in my first hunt to be a midday, I know 90% of the time while I'm walking into my stand midday, my chances of bumping into a deer are not very high versus the morning and me not knowing anything. So I rather take a step back, go in the afternoon, kind of see what's happening, and then start to really make my plan versus going in there and hurting the farm, letting all the deer know what's about to go down or something's different than usual, and now I just hurt my odds that I have on a limited hunt, let's say, a limited day hunt, let's say. So, um, early season, I'm always going to say, let's pick Midwest. I will not hunt the mornings in the Midwest unless it's on camera that for sure I can get in there. For sure, it's a travel corridor from his feed to his bedding area, and I could sneak somewhere in the middle and catch him on that pass through going to bed. Yes. So there is certain times where you can crash in the mornings and be very successful. So I'm not saying do not at all, never. I'm just saying take that early season with kick gloves. Really, be careful with what you have early season, especially when you don't know. So, you don't have any cameras out, you don't know any better, go to the afternoons. Or, if you haven't been getting any camera pictures of anything really daylighting in the morning, I've just heard people say, well, it's opening day. How could you not sit? You're gonna hurt yourself that way. You're decreasing your odds. So that's when I would say, well, if you haven't had anything on camera, for X amount of time, but all your money shots have been in the afternoon, well, then why even hurt your odds? Just go to the afternoon. So what happens is a lot of the times is in the mornings, they're on the feed fields, early season. And sometimes your walkway has to go past their feed where they're at night in the mornings, so you end up busting them. That's why a lot of the times, it's hot in September, they tend to move earlier, before the sun comes up and gets too hot, so there's a lot more activity sometimes in the morning. Um they're not very passive early season like they would be in the rut, where their mindset is thinking only on one thing in the rut and they're just thinking about her, and you can kind of push your limits a lot more in the rut versus early season. So when you have to walk past those situations, that's why you kind of want to fall back on afternoon. Plus, if you kind of look, usually it's like a 80-20 split. 20% you'll have daylight morning movement versus 80% you'll have a lot of afternoon movement, daylighting. So afternoons early season tend to be better. Now, there is, in some place in the Midwest, um, there is a thing called the October lull, right? So let's say the season opens mid-September, and now, you know, you're starting to build a pattern, you're starting to get them working, you're starting to figure them out, but all of a sudden you get to this October lull thing, and basically, what I really put it down to what it is it's bachelor groups that have been friends all summer long and been hanging out, to all of a sudden it's like, hey, I don't want to be around you anymore because we're chasing girls and you're not my friend, you're my foe. So I'm gonna move and get my own territory where I'm king. So what happens is usually Mother Nature at that time, when this October lull is happening, first couple weeks of October, first 2 weeks of October sometimes, is where it's too hot during the day for them to move and put some miles on their feet. So what they end up doing is they move at nighttime. So all of a sudden you've gone like September, you're like daylight, 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 and you're like, man, they all turn nocturnal. And it's just because they're just moving to different territories. So that's why sometimes you'll notice you pick up some deer and you could possibly lose some deer because they're going to their target places where they, are the king and no one else is around them, and starting to really branch out and open up and broaden their territories and kind of want to be solo sometimes. um Not all the time, sometimes they will. I've seen in November you'll see two bucks together vibing and hanging out. Best friends, what can I say? So that when it comes to hunting the October lull, those that time, um, again, it's kind of live by your cameras. Don't pressure your best spots. So even in September, new place I've never been to, I will refrain. Let's say okay, well, this is where I really think their betting is. I will refrain from just jumping in on the best spot just because it's the best spot, and I'll usually hunt the edges, start getting an idea of what's happening, even though, yes, you're limited to a certain number of days, 5 days. And okay, but if you could put a day, or day and a half into figuring out what they're kind of doing, what's the vibe of this farm, what's the wave, because they're like waves. They're gonna feed this way and come back this way and feed this way and come back this way. So you're just trying to figure out what they're doing, and then jump in and make your big move versus make your big move and it was the wrong move. So same thing October, in the October lull. I kind of don't like saying that, but whatever. October lull situation is what it's most known as. You're kind of figuring out what's happening. They don't even really know. They're just kind of going here, going there. You'll start seeing some new scrapes pop up, and it could be just bucks that are just cruising through, that the scrape actually means nothing. He just saw the tree, hit the scrape, and just kept rolling on to a whole nother thing. So sometimes you find yourself chasing the tail. So what I've noticed in that specific time is, if you're in a place that has soybean fields, usually when the beans are green, they're on the beans. They're smashing the beans. When you see that bean field start to turn yellow and those leaves start to turn yellow, usually you don't even see deer there anymore. They don't like the way it tasted. Usually around that time couples with when the acorns start to fall. So if you can chase their stomach in this October lull, which September also you're chasing their stomach, but targeting them that time is, they're trying to put on as much weight as they possibly can before this rut comes. So if you can figure out what is their primary food source at that time, where you're at, wherever that may be, that's where they're going to be. And if you can couple it with Mother Nature and God blessing you with an amazing day, cold fronts, which that'll be a whole nother episode on its own, because I absolutely love and live and die by some weather aspects here and there. Um, but if you can say, okay, we have a whatever temperature, decreased, a 20-degree swing. We have the wind that they move the best on at this place. Then, okay, this is their primary food source. It's going to increase the daylight activity. when they're primarily moving nocturnal. So really depends on mother nature, food source, and just not chasing your tail. Knowing you should know, okay, they're targeting food, they're doing this to put weight on for the upcoming rut. So you want to be really trying to find food sources, not so much chasing scrapes yet. Just because, like I said, it could be a cruise through deer that just cruise through. You put a camera up and you're like, dang it, man, I'm not getting any more pictures. He was just cruising through from point A to point B, and he just whatever got a whiff of another buck and says, well, I'm just gonna upset this guy, make a scrape, and just keep rolling out. He might come back later, but I've seen that very many times. Now you get to the fun. You start getting closer to the fun time, which is I love the last 2 weeks of October. I I love those, that and on, obviously. Um, they all have their own success. They all have their ups and they all have their downs. Even in the rut, has up, has its negatives. It's just everyone has those give and goes. Last 2 weeks of October. Okay, now you really start playing with them. Midwest here. Now you really start playing more primarily in Missouri, where I'm at. Now you really start playing on their love strings, their heart. They're still trying to put weight on, but they're also ready for that first available doe. So they are banging out the scrapes. They're hitting the scrapes really hard. They're working them. You can start grunting. You can start calling to them, rattling to them. So I'm gonna tell you how I approach this rattle grunt decoy phase. So even early season sometimes I let the farm dictate what I should do, not me dictate what the farm should do. And what I mean by that is sometimes in September, I've sparred before, and everybody's like, "What are you doing? Taking out horns in September?" That's what the farm is doing. I just watched the night before 6 bucks come out, and they were all sparring with each other. So if the next afternoon I went out and I sparred and I mimicked it, not more aggressive, not just exactly what I heard them do, it's normal operation. It's exactly what's happening right now. And it has what I've noticed with that scenario in September is you'll actually make them move sooner than they actually wanted to. And why? It's because you start tickling and sparring and messing around. He's in his bed thinking, oh, well, everybody's up earlier than they really should be. So he maybe gets up 30 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier, and exposes himself and gives you more time to capitalize, possibly. So I let the farm dictate what I should do. October comes, I'm sitting there, I'm watching bucks scraping, I'm watching their ears lay back, their hair puff up, them getting in an aggressive demeanor, and that's showing me like, okay, well, this farm is ready to play. They're pretty aggressive right now, and you can start pushing the envelope on them. You can start, lightly snort wheezing. Please, for goodness sakes, I don't know what it is with this whole snort wheezing thing that people snort wheeze like they have a trumpet up there. And if you've ever heard a deer snort wheeze, it's almost like, did I just hear him snort wheeze? Most of the time, it's very light, very subtle. And I would rather grunt, snort wheeze in that demeanor sometimes when I know he's out there, he's in front of me, we're there, he's not paying attention to me, versus just, I would rather him kind of hear me versus definitely hear me, definitely pinpoint exactly where I'm at. I don't want that. I would rather curiosity kills the cat. I would rather him get curious about me, turn around, and start looking for me versus knowing where I'm at. On that point, also, if you grunt at that deer, right? He's there with his ears like this. You grunt at that deer, and you see his ear flip back. He He heard you. He heard you. Don't oh I've seen people just grunt and grunt and grunt and grunt and grunt. And well, now you're not acting like a normal deer. And you know, some of the times, a lot of times, that'll just push him away. He's just like, something's weird over there. I'm not gonna do that. I don't know what's wrong with this guy. I'm not going over there. But if you and you see him pick his head up, he heard you. I'm not saying don't grunt again, but give some space, give some time before your next grunt, because sometimes you'll do that lightly. You'll see him catch you with his ear, or he'll pick his head up. He won't look your way, but you'll see him pick his head up and turn his ear that way. He heard you, and then all of a sudden you'll see him immediately start ripping up a bush and making a crazy scrape and going to town on the scrape. He's aggressive. He's upset that you just did this. So now because of that, he's doing that. His next move might be him come and start working a scrape line down the field towards you. Versus if you maybe outcalled him, he's just gonna be like, something's weird, and go the other direction. So, don't outplay your hand. Just nice and easy. Easy. And once you know he's coming your way, don't grunt again. He's already coming your way. Just put it away and just relax. Let the field play itself and let the cards unfold however they're about to unfold. Um, Snort wheezing, the same thing. Snort wheeze, sometimes I'll do it very low. And if I see no change in his demeanor, I'll do it again, little louder, and boom, you caught him. He heard you. He picked you up now. He got it. Instead of sometimes out blasting yourself, just like when you have nothing around you and you want to hit a grunt call. Sometimes I won't just blast it just because there's nothing. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that they're not there. There's deer within ear range. So I'll hit, moderate tone. I'll hit a moderate tone at them and wait, see what happens. See if something shows up. If nothing shows up, then I'll get maybe a little bit louder with my call. Or now I'll rattle a little louder just so I can get some distance on it. So you kind of have to not always just bang on their front door on it, just ease up to it. So, also that time, like I said, they're looking for that first estrus doe. So they will play in your hand a little easier just because they're so hot. They're looking for that first estrus doe that they make stupider moves than normal because they just really want that first doe. They really want that. So you can trick them in that demeanor. And now when it comes to scrapes, right? Scrapes is a great thing to use. Scrapes is amazing, but I've also seen people put too much emphasis on a certain kind of scrape. So, I don't know if you guys ever seen, you'll have some little scrapes and then you'll have some just massive, as big as a car hood kind of scrape. And I call that like a community scrape. You'll see multiple bucks go there time after time after time after time using these scrapes. And then, you know, sometimes you'll have just a little scrape, and sometimes it could be just a mature deer that nobody wants to mess with, and it's just a small scrape. But really pay attention to days to come. If you don't have a camera to put on that scrape to give you MRI, really put on, days of you hunting, watching that scrape. Has anything changed in that scrape? If you see you've put multiple days on a scrape and nothing's changed in that scrape, maybe you should change where you're hunting to your focus on something else versus that scrape. And another one is like after it rains, they love to freshen up scrapes on a rain because it just washed all of their scent away, their name, their code. It washed it away. So if you know you have a hot scrape and you see rain in the forecast, get your butt in there and hunt on that, because you have a high probability of that deer coming in there and working that scrape to get his name on it, especially during daylight hours. That's that's another one. Um, I get questioned too about rubs. You know, I've harvested a deer making a rub, but I can't say that there was rubs there and that's what brought him there. I had grunted, I got him all kinds of upset and aggressive, and he was just scraping and rubbing the world on his way to me just because he was mad. But more often than not, I've seen a lot of rubs, you know, uh, evening, like when I've put cameras on rubs, it's nighttime kind of stuff. Um, and I'm not saying they haven't. I've seen deer from a distance making rubs as they walk, but I can't say I've ever targeted a specific rub for a deer. So just because, unless there is some times where I've seen a tree that's been hit multiple years in a row and it's whittled down to nothing. All right, so there's certain aspects where it works. I'm just saying I have never. I can't tell you that it's. I think maybe once in South Florida, I did harvest pretty nice buck, and my only intel, it was my second day on public land, and my only intel there was fresh rubs, and you could tell it had all the fluff, all the the material from the tree, the bark fluffed up underneath it, and you could tell it was freshly done. Um, and I ended up putting a stand. And I ended up harvesting this deer at 12 o'clock. It was a full moon. I had a pretty good idea that they were going to move midday, and ended up barreling in and sat from the whole morning to midday and ended up harvesting this deer midday. Um, this is going to be a very controversial one here, and I'm sure there's going to be some heat on it, but I absolutely love a full moon. So I know people love to throw shade on the whole hunting of a full moon situation. I like growing up to a full moon 4 days before and 4 days after and on the full moon. Yes, can full moon, have some nighttime movement, and sometimes does it hurt the daytime movement? I'm gonna put it in this aspect for you. I'm gonna give it to you, and then we do that. I do this all the time with all the hunters at the lodge when we're in the evening talking after the hunt, and we go over all of this stuff. So tell me, what other moon produces all day movement, right? So you know any other moon phase, even on like a no moon, you'll have early morning, late evening. But a full moon, you have early morning, because sometimes not all of them move early morning because they were moving at nighttime, correct? Now, this is coupled with Mother Nature now, so we need cool weather too, not just hot temperatures. So we need cool weather, and October, November full moons is what I love as well. But anyway, you need Mother Nature to play fair, but you have early morning movement. Then, because not all the deer moved in the morning, and some of them ate in the nighttime because there was a lot of light, you have midday movement, and then you have afternoon movement. And if you don't believe me, look at just put your cameras out and pay attention to your cameras. And you tell me when you're like, dang it, why is this deer moving at 11 o'clock? Look at the moon phase. Why is that deer moving at 11 o'clock? Look at the moon phase. And the reason I like a full moon is to a subject that we're going to be getting to, is all day sits. So I love a full moon. I've never backed away from anything on a hunt of anywhere that, oh, it's a full moon. Okay, if it's a full moon in hot weather, but even still, Florida, some of the times you'll see deer at 12 o'clock and it's 102 degrees, and it's most of the time it's a full moon. It's They're just out because they're hungry, and it's a full moon situation. And so I tend to really like a full moon. I like that pressure it builds with it and after it, especially when you could couple it with last 2 weeks of October, or first 3 weeks of November. Oh man, it's a good one. That's very high intensity, and I could just tell you this: over years of doing this, I have multiple, have, I don't know, over 150 cameras out, and I have all this intel that I go by, and I've just noticed there's a lot more daylight activity on a full moon. Yes, does it have evening, nighttime activity? Yeah, of course. But even on a new moon, I'm sure you get nighttime activity. So I just think it's kind of the only moon phase that promotes all day, movement, and especially when you couple it with an all day sit. So, now we're folding over into the beginning of November situation. So you go into the beginning of November situation, and yes, the grunting intensifies, the rattling intensifies, the use of decoys. that last week of October on, I really love using decoys. I really do love using decoys, and I'm gonna tell you one of my tricks on it. Is I use the smaller doe decoy you can find, the better, and I will poke one hole in their head and put one horn. The reason is they fight on body weight. You know, these deer don't walk up to a mirror or to the lake and look and be like, "Oh, I got a good fighting rack this year." They, that's not what they do. They base themselves on weight. You know, when one comes out and he's stocky and big and he's walking around like he's the king, and a deer walks out that's 50 pounds lighter than him, they both know the difference. This guy's walking around like the Hulk. This guy's walking around skilly willy. You know, he's might get his butt whooped. And maturity has a lot to do with it, and even just their demeanor. I've seen 170-inch deer get destroyed by 150-inch deer, and that 150-inch deer had 50 pounds on that 170, and his demeanor was just so, he was just mad at the world. He was mad at the world, and his demeanor plus his extra weight. I mean, so horn size has nothing to do with it. I've also seen in one of my cases, one of my biggest bucks I've ever shot was, this massive 200-inch deer and big body, 290 plus, plus pounds around there. And this other buck that was not 180, probably like 200 pounds, 220, but very aggressive. He had a 10-point frame, but all of these were broke off except his brow tine. And then on this side, he had his brow tine and a long, like a 12-inch G2. So when they would fight, the big buck, the 200, couldn't stop him. He couldn't lock him up to hold him, and he was getting poked in the eye. And when I ended up harvesting this deer, he had like 12 puncture wounds in his rear end. He had gouge wounds all around his eyes, and it just circumstances that deer, you know, had a perfect killer rack and a demeanor that was terrible, and it played in his favor. So, but anyway, back to the decoy situation. So the smaller the decoy with one rack, it's like if I told you, hey, you either can fight the Hulk or you can fight this guy over there, that's 100 pounds, and you know, it's you're probably just gonna be like, well, I'm gonna fight this guy. This guy's probably gonna bash me against the walls here, so I'm just gonna go for this little guy here. And not always the right choice, but that's the way they perceive it. They're just looking at that and they're like, even bucks that don't want to fight. I've seen it. I'll have that decoy out there and a spike will walk out and he'll look at that decoy and be like, I could take that on. And he'll come right in and destroy it, blow it up. And it's because he's looking at weight. And another reason I also like using a buck decoy is because every time I've ever used a doe decoy where there's a lot of does, those does know their own harem. They know their own girls that are in their clique. So they will come up to that doe decoy and harass it and blow and stomp and cause all kinds of craziness. But if you have a buck decoy, they don't want to be harassed. It's in the rut. They don't want to be chased. They're not there yet. So they end up staying away from your decoy, which is great. So when the bucks come out, they're like, "Hey, who's this guy here?" And they walk up to it. So, that's my little trick. Small decoy, one horn, and it ends up working out in my favor. And I've never had it scare off deer. I mean, I have video of one afternoon. I think I had 8 different bucks come to fight this little decoy, and um, I think the smallest one was like a little 6 point, and I ended up harvesting a drop tine buck off of it. But I had like probably like 130 inch, 135-inch 8 there. I had 2 other 8s, a small 10, all kinds of deer on this. And it just sometimes they really work in your favor, especially when you're trying to bring them to you. It's an amazing tool to have. So now let's switch over a little bit to sitting all day. versus not sitting all day. So we talked about the full moon and the sitting all day situation, but even out of a full moon, time of the year kind of dictates when you should sit full moon. I mean, sit all day. So like when I have a hunter October the 19th, so I'll have October the 19th is usually when I start. Just because the success rates are so much better from there on. But when I have somebody tell me, "Hey, should I sit all day?" I'm not going to waste their time. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to tell you, "Yeah, sit all day." And now I have a guy that's burnt out, tired, and when it comes to game time that afternoon, I've burnt this guy out because I've been telling him to sit all day. So I'm just very straightforward. I'd rather just tell you, hey, listen, the cameras have not been showing that they're moving all day. You're better off giving a good 3, 4, 5 hours in the morning or 4 hours in the morning, coming in, having lunch, relax, and shoot our bows, kind of shake off the day and get back after it in the afternoon and really get into it. Um, so all day sits are very mental. It's a mental game because you're not seeing things sometimes all day long, which makes it exciting. Sometimes after 10 o'clock, the movement dies, and now you're like, am I wasting my time here? Is this dumb? Should I leave? Should I stay? Should I? So many things. And so, what I try to do is I try to make it more entertaining for myself, right? So, it's the time of the year where I should sit all day. It's the rut or building up to the rut. And what I do is, all right, 10 o'clock was the last time I saw a deer. And 11 o'clock, what I'll do is I'll tell myself, okay, from 10 to 11, if I see no deer, I'm going to rattle. At 11 o'clock, I'm going to hit the rattles together. And then I'm going to wait another hour and see what comes. But now, what did that do is it entertained my mind because when I do that rattle session, I'm waiting the whole time to see what happens. Now, 12 o'clock comes, I'll have a little snack, eat my lunch, bam, hit the horns together again, do a little grunt session, relax, wait, give it an hour. Okay, nothing. Hour and 15 minutes. Hit the rattles again, hit the grunt, wait. But it kind of lets your body expect something the whole time versus you just sitting there and all of a sudden you drop your guard. mm, and always when you drop your guard, that's when they show up. I don't know. It's I don't know. They just feed off of that situation. So that's how I kind of entertain myself as I give myself a goal and something to wait for throughout the day. It gives me motivation to keep it going because hunting is a very mental thing. Um, like I've said in one of my other podcasts is, you know, when you've sat there and you're ready to move, wait 10, 20 minutes, you know? And sometimes when you have that urge to move, it's because something is giving you that urge. Mother Nature is giving you that urge to move, but everything else is feeling it too. And usually, if you give yourself another 20 minutes, usually something pops up in front of you. And that was just the urge. That was that pressure. That was the Mother Nature giving that urge to move, and everything felt it. So, same thing with that. If you know it's the time to be there, dude, we're limited on you know, on November or the last 2 weeks of October. We're limited on that. It only comes once a year. So put your time in. Give it your all. If you book a hunt or you go to a place out of state or you go to a public land or whatever the case is, don't waste your time. Give it your best effort. You can't put in 2 hours and be like, well, I gave it. If you're gonna give it, give it. You're gonna put your time into something, put it in there and it will pay you back. Especially okay, this is the rut. This is when they've been going. This is what the outfitter said they move all day, or this is what my cameras say they move all day. This is do it. Don't let it play you. You're in it. You've booked this hunt and you're gonna put all your time into it, or you've traveled to this place, put your time in. You know, like people say all the time, you can't kill them from the couch, and that is for sure. Unless you have a couch in the middle of the woods and that's your spot, well, then yeah, I guess you can. But if you don't, then no, you cannot kill them from the couch. Hey, everybody, I would like to take a quick second here and say thank you to my sponsors. First of all, I would like to give a big thank you to Tacticam cell cameras. I have been using them for 4 years now, and have countless number of success stories using their cell cameras. They have absolutely changed the game. If you haven't checked out a Tacticam cell cam, you will not regret it. Also, I would like to give a big thank you to Weaver Custom Calls. He makes custom turkey calls and they are outstanding. I mean, the guy is part turkey, so definitely go check out Weaver Custom Calls. I would also like to give a big thank you to Dirty South Taxidermy. He's mounted a lot of my deer. He mounts all kinds of animals. Go check out Dirty South Taxidermy. Now let's get back to the show. Now, late season, right? Now we just moved to December, January. What I've noticed a lot late season is they revert back to basically their September early patterns. They're driven by their stomach. They've lost a lot of weight from the rut. They're trying to put the weight back on. They're looking for that second swing of estrus does. So you kind of have a mix of everything of them starving and them looking for the next estrus doe. Um, so I go back to my early season strategies and only hunting the afternoons. And listen, guys, I completely understand it's a pain in the butt sometimes to say, well, heck, I'm here. I need to hunt the mornings. And if you really want to hunt the mornings, hunt the outskirts. Hunt something that's not going to bother you. Yes, it decreases your odds because maybe you've just never gotten anything there. Maybe you just want to shoot a doe. But try to not hunt your best spots or where you need to be in the mornings. Hunt them in the afternoons because I've noticed it in late season, those last 45 minutes of light, that is game time. That is when the magic happens. 95% of the time, late season, it's right there. That's when things are going to go down. So, late season, you're on a food source, you're on a food plot, you're on a big ag field that was recently cut, or whatever the case may be, water source is another big one. If it hasn't rained and you have a good water source that's not froze up, water's a good one too, especially right after the rut. They will really hang their hat on some water, getting hydrated again. But I would not extend long sits on that. Usually my all day sits are going to go from that last week of October into like right before Thanksgiving. And that, remember, we're talking about Missouri here, which that's kind of our rut time, our rut swing. Every state has a different rut. Believe it or not, Florida, our rut is like in August, you know, end of July. You'll see them chasing does. August, they're chasing does like crazy in 102 degrees. And then that's South Florida. Go to Orlando, and their rut is like February. And then you go past that, it's just crazy. And then you go to Georgia, which kind of has a Novemberish rut, but then like you move to the Carolinas and around there, some of those places have February, January, February ruts. So I'm just speaking on Missouri right now, the Midwest by me, and but those rut tactics can be used in your place in your rut slot in your date slot there, um, in that manner. But I hope you guys really enjoyed today's show. I always, as usual, enjoy bringing it to you. And if you guys would love to hit that subscribe, drop a comment, let me know what you think. Also, if you want to check out what I do, you can go to RMA Outfitters on Instagram, and you can check out the website too, rmaoutfitters.com, and check out there. And if you ever want to come hunting with me, you're more than welcome. But till the next time, guys, we will shoot the shit later. See ya.